they wrote a postcard which would say, a modest proposal for peace, that Christians determined not to kill other Christians. That's not bad, is it? Things to be wrestled with. It's amazing. It is modest. I would think it was rather natural. So Brits killing each other, or Irish, ones. I mean, this doesn't make any sense. The wider question is, as you advance in your lives, is, has something gone wrong with the faith? Now, that's what I'm doing with my translation and so on. So if you come and talk about that, it's fun. Did something perhaps go wrong? Again, the famous, I'm trying to think of the tune, but Les Miserables, marvelous, brilliant line of music. I can't think of the tune. I thought you'd all sing that. Do you know that? You know that show, right? Les Miserables, you've heard of it. There's a marvelous line of it all went wrong. Don't let it impress you. But facing the reality of life, perhaps something has gone a little bit wrong. And perhaps this discussion of ethics is part of the problem. This is at my site, restorationfellowship.org. If you're interested in reading the whole thing, I hope you are, but I reread it after many years, and it is kind of interesting. Here's what the Bishop of London said in the war. I'm not sure that the voice of Jesus is heard yet. You're going to make up your minds. Kill Germans! Kill them not for the sake of killing, but for the sake of saving the world. Kill the good, kill the bad, kill the young ones, as well as the old. Kill those who have shown kindness to our wounded, as well as those fiends who crucified the Canadian sergeant. As I've said 1,000 times, I look upon it as a war for purity. I look upon everyone who dies in that war as a martyr. Amazing. I'm not sure that's quite the radical Christian standard. That would be the question. But I'm glad that we survived. I wouldn't be here standing if those Germans had come across. I'm still very grateful for the sacrifices of men. My dad didn't talk much about his holding this fellow with a broken leg for 45 minutes in the cold of the North Sea on April, for which he got his DSO. Couldn't talk about it. It was too awful. So we didn't discuss it. Then he had a very difficult job of going around the families of those sailors who had died in his ship, right? In that sink, to say to the bereaved parents, right? Oh, he said that's awful. So we need a better world. There's our gospel coming together. We need something better than this, and I think we'll get it eventually. But for the moment, these are the challenging words of these people. Okay. So, our friend in your writing here discussed a just war. Here's my reaction to the just war. It came from Augustine. I think Augustine, I get so much whichever this is. Augustine, and it came from philosophy. It was based on Cicero and other philosophers, the idea of a just war. To me, that's kind of fog language. As you go through life, be careful of the fog language. When people say something, really, you don't know what they're saying. Maybe it should be now, I hope not. Hope I'm being clear, but the fog language. What is a just war? Okay, you're in the army, you signed up for life, and your government goes into a war. Are you going to say, oh, is this a just war or not? I don't think that is real. So what is the just war? Well, the just war is supposed to be when you've got a good chance of winning, and the losses are less if you go to war than if you don't. It's fairly unclear, and it doesn't come really from Scripture as much as it comes from later Greek philosophy. Augustine, huge and very problematic person. He's the guy who dreamt that up. I didn't know that. Until about 313, when Constantine said the church is part of the state, that's when the armies were filled with soldiers. Before that, they wouldn't give them communion if they're killed. That's interesting. Part of history we don't really think about. So if you find that interesting, do read up on it, forming your thinking here. Okay, so that's the just war then. Rob, have you got a quote from that particular book? She's got a quote on the back of the book. What's the name of the book?
On Killing.
On the Killing.
Subtitled, The Psychological Cost of Learning to Kill in War and Society.
Mm-hmm.
He says, we observed that throughout history, the majority of men on the battlefield would not attempt to kill the enemy, even to save their own lives or the lives of their friends. And let me read another section.
Mm-hmm.
This is his conclusion. The average and healthy individual has such an inner and usually unrealized resistance towards killing a fellow man that he will not of his own volition take life if it is possible to turn away from that responsibility. At the vital point, says Marshall, the soldier becomes a conscientious objector.
Yeah. Most of them do. I didn't know that till this morning.
And then this, that the average man will not kill even at the risk of all he holds dear has been largely ignored by those who attempt to understand the psychological and sociological pressures of the battlefield. Looking another human being in the eye, making an independent decision to kill him, and watching as he dies due to your action, combine to form the single most basic, important, primal, and potentially traumatic occurrence of war. If we understand this, then we understand the magnitude of the horror of killing in combat.
Interesting. Interesting reading. It's a new thought to me. That is rather fascinating. Point being then, as human beings, we are programmed not to kill each other. It's very hard. Sometimes they would not have ammunition in the Civil War until they deliberately didn't load the gun. It couldn't really bring themselves to kill another Baptist in the South. That's very striking. It's rather encouraging that we are compassionate to that extent. So the just war then, this man says, a war must be waged as a last resort and only as a sovereign nation. Well, who's going to make that judgment? The president, obviously. I don't know if the average soldier is going to be involved in that sort of a judgment. So what's he supposed to do? A war must have just provocation, not be motivated by the prospect of gaining profit or power. I mean, that's a pretty difficult decision for the average guy to make. It didn't seem very real to me. A war must be fought with a reasonable expectation of success, and it must end in peace. A nice flowery ideas, but are they really relevant to the average soldier or M? I don't think so. I wonder about it. So this man is of the pacifist school, from my angle, much too liberal biblically. He doesn't care whether we know what Jesus said or not, but he's determined that at least we should not kill each other, which is interesting to me. Okay, let's think about then very briefly the history of how this goes. Let's say Jesus then was of the pacifist school. I think he probably was. Turn the other cheek. What did he say to Peter when Peter whacked the ear off the fellow? Put up your sword, the defensive sword in this case. Because all who take the sword will perish with it. It sounds rather blanket. Yes, you can say that Cornelius wasn't told, and we don't exactly know what happened to Cornelius. He was a soldier. John the Baptist, before the Sermon on the Mount, didn't necessarily know exactly what Jesus was going to teach, but on the whole, it sounds to me that Christians, they took it that way until about 313 AD. There were no Christians in the army. Now, they can argue, as the book mentions, it could be idolatry, right? They weren't in because you had to kiss the pagan statues or whatever to be in the army. That could be part of it, but on the whole, they just didn't think that killing was what Jesus would do for 313 years. After that, gradually it turned itself on the head, and all the soldiers were now killing each other. You've heard of the Crusades, haven't you? What kind of nonsense is that? The Inquisition? Ghastly. What about Luther? This comes to the Reformation. Luther is a problematic person, you should know as you go into life and think about the Reformation. Luther says, basically, shut down the synagogues. He wrote a book called Gegen die Juden und ihre Lügen, against the Jews and their lies, in short of their lies. Isn't that amazing? That was Luther. Somebody being tried at, what was the trial, after the war?
Nuremberg.
Thank you. Nuremberg, on trial. One of the people being accused there of murdering Jews on a grand scale said, well, I was only doing what Luther said. There was some truth in that. Be aware of that as you go through your religious life. There was some truth in that. Luther says, now, as a Christian, you can't possibly do that. You can't kill. But now, as a worldly person, you can. You wear two hats. I'm not sure that's going to work. It doesn't seem to me like good ethics. It doesn't seem like honest ethics. So that's the way they squared it, right? And you're aware of Calvin, John Calvin, quite a problematic person, who burned at the stake somebody called Michael Servetus on an argument over the Trinity was. This Servetus being a brilliant Spanish medical doctor, geographer, an outstanding person, rather like Isaac Newton, who had been on the pastor's side probably too, but Michael Servetus died at the stake at the hands of Calvin. So be careful in your life who you proclaim as great and famous. You might want to check, see what they did. We talk about Alexander the Great. Or was it Alexander the Goofbag? He conquered the world. Then he sat down and wept. There was no more world. He died at 33 of wine, moon, and song. Alexander the Great, excuse me? I'm not sure. So question some of these ethical things to see if they really are true, or are you being taken for a ride by the authorities? I think that's the point that would be made. Okay, so after that time, then up to the Reformation, there are some pacifist groups, not many, because for 1,000 years, the Middle Ages, from the 500s to the 1500s or so, really embraced the Roman Catholics. There's not much protest. Although, in the 1300s, Wycliffe, the Lollards were pacifists. The followers of Wycliffe, who translated the Bible in 1300, they were definitely of the pacifist conviction. Then later on, various groups like the Mennonites, the Amish, and the Church of the Brethren were saying Jesus would not throw the bomb. So I like this quotation. That's in the book, isn't it, about the armband?
Oh, yeah.
I like that. This struck me as interesting. The section on which Jesus, I got sidetracked reading that, but do you remember the armbands that you wore? You don't wear them now, do you? Does anybody have a "What would Jesus do" thing on? Is that not cool in London? I've seen them around for a while. Here he makes this point, that they were wearing these bands. On September the 10th, 2001, "What would Jesus do" armbands. WWJD. Rubber braces being sold on the counters of bookstores, gas stations all over my hometown. In an entirely uncoordinated but massively hypocritical gesture, he says, every one of those bracelets disappeared on 9/11. That's interesting. I had never thought of that, but that is rather telling. It just went. So, because no one wanted to ask that question anymore, nor would they tolerate any corollary question like, who would Jesus bomb? Telling, isn't it? Interesting. Are we as honest as we like to think we are? Perhaps we are. Isn't this a broad ethical question? Seems to me it is. So, who would Jesus bomb? The apparently desirable piety implied in the question became increasingly unwelcome in a country that wanted to revenge in the bloodiest possible way. Interesting. So that was the point I got from this good reading. Do make sure you read that and think about that. It's very challenging. And do a little history and see what happened to the violence as it developed out of an original, apparently, international church. See, I'm a green card person here. You can detect I'm not from America, although somewhat Americanized. My brother in England says, "Why do you talk like a Yank?" He doesn't know what a Yank is. I don't really. But anyway, why you sound like a Yank? What was it? I don't sound like a Yank, not over here, but your accent gets eroded, doesn't it, as you live in different places. But I'm a green card person. I'm a green card. Listen, I get to drive on the same wrong side of the road as you do. I get to pay the same taxes exactly, and I enjoy all the amazing benefits of living in this fantastic country. It's amazing. You can have any sort of food you want to travel have, right? We drove up an amazing freeway this morning. I'm sure you appreciate that, right? We really must. You're living, but this calls for action from you too, because the greater the gifts, the more responsible we are. But I'm part of an international Christian group. I just don't think I can risk being involved in fighting the world's wars. I know that sounds very selfish, and I appreciate the police. You know, if our alarm goes off at our home in Georgia, we've got 5 brigades and 3 or 4 police cars. I'm very grateful. So the argument is, well, if somebody comes with a gun into your room, you're going to not do anything. Well, that's an interesting question, not quite like international war. But if it's so that I should be armed to the teeth, then I should be training myself to do that. When I put that question to people, they're less convinced. If it's right that somebody comes to my house and tries to kill me or somebody, I ought to be prepared. Surely, have a gun. I'm allowed to use it. I don't have one. That question is interesting. Ask your friends on that one. Would I try to stop the person? Yes. If someone's committing suicide, I'd do my best to stop him jumping out of the window. Of course I would. But the Christian has to ask this question. A fun Facebook question, by the way. If you want to riot on your hands, ask this question. When you've just killed your enemy and he's there lying on the ground with the blood coming out of his ears, you say, did I love my enemy? Fascinating question. It is interesting. I'm hesitant. You see that? I'm nervous about that one. So it's fearfully radical, it's terribly radical, impractical if you like, but it seems to be the Christian ethic, and this man is doing his best to follow what he sees to be the Christian ethic at that point. So that's my story of pacifism. What have I left out, Ron? Anything?
You were in the Navy at one point in your father's tradition.
I was. We had to do conscription. We had to do 2 years of national service, ended in 56. That was the last session, 2 years they did. So, being the son of an admiral, Dad was a rear admiral when he retired, and so Navy was it. And I'm very grateful to the Queen because I travelled at Her Majesty's expense all over the world for 2 years. They thought I had leadership qualities. I don't know why. Son of an officer, maybe. You've got to have some leadership. So we'll send you to the north part of England in the cold, and we'll train you to be an officer. So at 6 o'clock in the morning, we were out there polishing, what do you call them in America? Trash cans, right? Garbage things. Polishing them for the Admiral's inspection. In charge of 6 other men to show we were using our leadership qualities to be an officer. So I became a midshipman, and then what we call a lieutenant, I think you call a lieutenant. Since I'm blind, they didn't let me steer the ship, so white band around my arm, secretarial contract. When I got onto this thinking about war, I later resigned my commission. Dad was very generous, very kind. Didn't agree with it exactly, but I'm much too old now to be in the Navy or anything, but I resigned that commission. I had to do it for the conscience sake. I think that's right, but you're going to have to, with your children, wrestle with these questions, if that's the right word. I think so. These are practical things. This is not just academics. You are what you believe. You are what you think. You know that. They're not just interesting academic classes to get a grade on. There is an ultimate point of studying all this, I think, which they're doing well. Anybody have any reactions to any of that? I'd love to know what you're thinking before I start quizzing you, who you are, and you're fixing to do whatever. Some of you are caregivers, right? Again, you're going to deal with autistic children. You're going to travel. I do hope you travel. Please go see the rest of the world now. Much you need it. That is help. Where are you from, sir?
Me?
Yes.
I'm from Myanmar.
It's Burma to me.
Yeah, Burma. It used to be Burma.
It used to be Burma. Can I invite a couple of comments from that time? The diversion. Fascinating. Tell us your story, please. How's that work?
I went to Malaysia when I was 12.
Mm-hmm.
I stayed there 2.5 years.
Yes.
And I came here in 2007.
In which year? 2007?
2007,
Yeah.
yes.
Your English is brilliant. How do you do this?
From school.
That's a talent.
Thank you.
And you're from Burma, and so your native tongue is Myanmarese, or what do you call it? Burmese.
Burmese, yeah.
So we talk about Burmese language, but the country is not Burma.
No, the country is Myanmar.
Well, yeah, I can tell you're not from England, probably not from Georgia. You see what a talent that is to have 2 languages? Even a marketable talent, right? Are the law courts, occasionally for your people who then use interpreter? Well, keep that bilinguality. It's wonderful. Yeah, okay. So you're fixing to be what when you get older than you are now? Fixing to do what as a career?
I want to go back to my country. And,
Help them out.
yeah.
Interesting. It's a peaceful country?
No.
No. The religion is Buddhism, yeah?
Yes.
So the Buddhists have the same problem, they're not all living at peace. The Dalai Lama telling them to be peaceful? No, they're not doing that somehow.
There are many different kind of religions, but the majority is religion.
So you're going to help the government, maybe? What?
No,
Politically?
maybe it's more village.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Fascinating. Good. tell me, am I allowed to do this, Brian? Just for my own interest. If I'll pick on something, I'll pick on it. You have to say, oh, good. I'll speak up. No, it's very fascinating to see what people think. What are you fixing to do? I'm going to guess here. You're a computer whiz. Oh, wow. You can see it comes out of a report, right? Very good report. Going to do software? Yeah, I don't think to believe so. Are you going to do new software or something? I'm pretty much this. I've paid $100 for this stuff. It's all things. It's all set up. No. That's interesting. Well, my question to you then, it's not on topic here, but if you allow me to briefly. I don't see how computers could be better than they are. Well, what could you do with a computer that I don't do with mine?
Isn't that the great question, though?
It's not a great question. It is. Well, I mean, what is to be done with computers to make them? I mean, you look at your telephone here and you find out something on internet. I mean, it's amazing. I don't even have that thing. I can do a cell phone. I can do a cell phone. I have to struggle with that slowly. Don't do it when you're driving. But anyway, that's amazing to me. I mean, it's a phenomenon, the computer. It's absolutely magic. I can get a Google book out and look for the word everlasting life, find it like that, and this is amazing. You see how long that would take 5 years ago? You couldn't do it. I can do the work of 50 people easily in a few minutes. So it intrigues me to know what a computer would be like in 50 years from now, let's say, if you had your inventive skills going. What would it look like, you know?
That's hard to predict. Technology changes too quickly.
Interesting. Okay. You're a caregiving lady. You're going to teach or something. I asked you this already.
No, I'm going into graphic design.
Graphic design, okay. That's drawing for companies.
Yeah, like print and posters, invitations.
Amazing. So art is your thing. You can make things look
Yeah.
like they really are.
I love art.
Interesting. You're very musician here. Any musicians? Anybody plays instruments here? Guitar, maybe? No? I'm an oboist. An oboe is a double reed instrument. Very difficult one. I'm glad I didn't do that as a career because you're only as good as your last performance. And it's agonizingly difficult. It's beautiful work. It needs to be done right. So I didn't do that, but I'm doing it in my retirement. When I was 73, I took it up again and play oboe in the Peachtree Wind Band. And I love it. It's nice socializing, and I'm playing American marches. I know what it feels like to be an American bandsman. I know what that feels like. It stirs my heart. I'm not American, but that's wonderful. That's your national anthem is all over the place. It's hard. You know, people can't get up there. Okay, so you look like a, let's see, I think you are a teacher maybe? No? Doctor?
Nope.
Not a doctor?
Nope.
He's going to keep me in suspense.
Business.
Business?
Yes.
That's rather broad. What does that mean?
I grew up with a family business, working every day. Not every day, but
Yeah.
being in the environment business every
Can we
day.
ask what sort of family business?
My grandfather owns two businesses, a transportation business, it's a wide variety of transportation, and then we have a funeral home in town.
Okay, two things. So you walk right into the family business?
Not right now. Right now I'm in insurance. I work at a large insurance firm here in Evansville.
Incredible. You're working now as going to school as well.
Yes.
Amazing. I don't think I can discern business people. That's interesting. Sometimes you can tell as you talk to people, they're the caregiving type. Nurse, teacher, all of that good stuff. And you are a caregiving person, I guess.
I guess so.
Teaching little ones?
Well, right now I'm working as a disability services technician at Ivy Tech, so I assist with disability, and
Wow.
I have that kind of caretaking
Mm-hmm.
attitude, I like to think.
I'd like to think. You have it. No question you have it. It's fascinating. What about you, sir? What do you do? What are you fixing to do at this age?
I'm a computer science major as well. I'm gonna be a software developer, so I pay out my debt. And I think that's kind of boring to just work for a company and do their software. And after that, I'd like to make video games.
Make videos. So that feels completely lost on us old folk. Yeah, I told you about the GPS that was on the wrong setting, didn't I? Yeah, I told you. Okay, coming up yesterday. My secretary and daughter, Sarah, she was a National Merit Scholar, very bright, very good in English, and she's wonderful with all these, and my son-in-law said, same, he's very good with all that. Well, somebody put the setting wrong, so it was set on the GPS not to go on the freeway. So every time you make it try to go somewhere, it says get off the freeway. It said, I can't go into the guts of that thing and find out what setting, so I think I've got it now, so when I get home, it will get me out. That's an absolute miracle for GPS, as far as I do with it. What are you fixing to do with that? Business major, so yeah, that covers a huge amount of area of ground. It's wonderful, very clever. We all studied law at Oxford, not knowing what we were going to do, but that was so boring to me, I couldn't stand it. I don't care how they emancipated slaves in Rome. Who cares? Okay. Are you willing to tell me? I'm sorry this is a grueling thing, but would you tell us? Yeah, I'm excited. I got to tell you this. I was taken to a cocktail party. That's where we don't get drunk. You know, you Baptists are getting horrified. I can make little old ladies so mad. And I say that Jesus don't walk in water. Their heads go down. But I'll be in eternal hellfire, which I don't believe. Right. Okay, that's by the way. But in Denmark, I was taken by my parents to a cocktail party, and guess who was there? Lord Montgomery of Alamein, very famous warrior. And I was probably your age, you know. But he said, lad, what are you going to do when you grow up? What are you fixing to be? He wouldn't have said that, but he put it clearly. I said, sir, I have no idea. I'm undecided. He went for me like a machine gun. He said, you young people don't know what to do. You're so undecided. This is why we're all falling apart. I'm sort of retreating. So you're not doing that. But it's great to be undecided, isn't it? You're figuring this out. Wonderful. And your degree here will be in what? Huh?
I'm not sure.
You're not sure? You haven't decided on how you major. Okay, just picking up education. Anybody else want to say something about themselves? You guys are very modest about yourselves. You know, you're just normally polite. No musicians here. Nobody plays piano or guitar, anything? Hardly, you do.
Yeah, I play guitar.
Guitar, right. Pop guitar, church guitar, or church. Interesting. Fascinating. Anyway, that's about my story, Brian. Unless there's something else, you know, what can we do? Take over, help me out. You got a minute.
Maybe since you have admitted to being 80 years old,
Yes, yes.
which is, I'm sure, the oldest person in here.
Probably, you're not that.
No, I'm 25 years behind you. But observations in life, what might you do differently? What do you wish you had learned sooner? What would you study? Is there another language that would interest you?
Yeah.
You've written 7 or 8 books. Is there another book to write? What would you tell us about that?
That's interesting. Yes, that is rather interesting. I think you do gain probably your best gains are made, I say, between 60 and 80. You've seen enough that you feel you've got some handle. My speciality is really religious denominations. I'm fascinated. Why have you got a Jehovah's Witness and a UPC, an SDA, Seventh-day Adventist, COB Church? Why have you got this plethora of different views all claiming the Bible? This just fascinates me. It's from my dad's naval intelligence things. See, I'm very interested. My grandfather was, as he mentioned, King George V and VI, his personal position. So they were good at what they did. You know, they just were good in that field. But I've learned that different people are very good in their fields. The guy that fixes my vehicle, who is now very interested in our theology and reading my translation, the guy's brilliant. How does he keep that Camry on the road? That's clever. I can't do that. He's just as valid. You know, talent is talent. Just use your talent. But I've learned very much to appreciate people. We're all snobbish in England. We think unless people do what you do, you know, they can't be worthwhile. That's just wrong. That's just terribly wrong. Everybody's talent is valid. What would I do different? I didn't have the confidence I have now. It comes with experience. And a lot of public speaking. Lots of it. I used to be a very shy kid. My mother would tell you, she would live, that when I was taken to a child's party, I used to hide behind the sofa and wouldn't talk to anybody. And then the mother would say at the end, it's time to go home now. And I'd say, what was it? I'd say, wasn't that fun? You know, we have a great time. She'd suffer through this brat, you know, who wouldn't talk to anybody. That changed. I can't explain that. I think public speaking, if you don't like doing that, you should do lots of it until you get used to it. I cannot fully explain how that works. What one do different, the art of life is to develop the talents that you have. You sit down, what am I good at? What do I love to do? I mean, people who do as a job what they love to do, I think that's wonderful. Don't you think so? To be paid. The art of life is to find out what you're good at and get something to pay you to do it. Come on. Isn't that right? And that has been largely true. Brian would say the same. We're both explorers in the field of religion, very much so. And it's been a couple of travel. Travel is just very exciting. Love to go to Burma, wouldn't you? Myanmar has a kind of mystique about it. Myanmar, you know, what's that way of that? In Indonesia, I've been to it. Not Myanmar. Wouldn't you love to go there? See the way they do things. Fascinating. So, the art of life then is to find out what you're good at and help get other people to ask you to define your talents. You know, well, some people, I'm not much good at it. Yes, you are. And other people will tell you, you're a caregiver, you're something, and I see this in you, you know. In this fellow, I happen to get lucky with him. You can just see him helping the human race with these super computer things. And then you pick the right mate, and as I said to you before, you take your prospective mate home, see how well they fit in your environment. It's not a golden rule, it's a good idea. Great idea, because if you're stuck with this, you don't have divorce. We don't divorce. Let's not do that. Let's not do divorce. I've seen the tragedy. I've seen it picked up the pieces. That's all he said. Don't do that. You can possibly try not to do that. Pick the right mate who fits with your environment a little bit. Having some infallible rule. But that is just part of the key, I think, to having a good life. And then you just proceed. Somebody said to me in the other class, you know, how did you do all that translating? And I say, this is what we do. I was in small classes doing Bible day after day, you know, with a variety of people. This is what you do. If you don't do that, you haven't done what you should do. Most translations are 98% of the time right, but there are some very subtle crime scenes in your training. You don't know that, another subject, but there are things where the system is trying to force you to believe what they believe, not necessarily what Jesus or Paul said. So that's another area. We talk about that on another occasion. But that's just been fun, and there are typos in that translation, typos, and when we give them out people and people get them reviewed, and I say to Amazon, I say, keep your pencil handy and tell me where we've typoed, because it's almost impossible to get everything right in a translation. And so in one place in Revelation we have, their names were not written in the book of life, and we left out the word not. My daughter's horrified, my secretary daughter. So we'll get that right. Second printing, we sold 1,000 out of 2,000. When we print some more, we'll have all that put right. So if that's what you're into, you'll translate. Otherwise, it's been a British life, you know, a British life. And boarding school, I don't recommend. Don't send your children away when they're 8 to the public school. That's the private school. Don't necessarily do that. They need you as parents. It's not a disaster, but we, for instance, in America, do this, you know, 2 sexes together in the same room, right? You can handle that from this age. In my case, until I was 18, I'd never seen a girl. Not really. I had a sister, younger. But when I went to university, and there were women, and what is this? What are these women? Oh, these amazing groups. No, isn't that something that's a single-sex thing, led, in some cases, to homosexuality? Not necessarily a good idea, and that wasn't part of the system. So now, you do much better. You mix the boys and the girls earlier on. It's a great idea. I would never do it that way. I wouldn't do the boarding school thing. You separate your parents for 2/3 of the year from the age of 8 forever. That's not probably good. Otherwise, that's it. What do you want to say? I'm going to say something really radical, outrageous. These people.
You mentioned your father, and of course he was a career Navy officer,
Yes.
held the rank of Rear Admiral, Director of
Yes.
Naval Intelligence.
Yes, he was.
Did he still hold out hope that there was a military-type solution to the world's problem?
Absolutely. Unfortunately, he wore himself out trying to get the Jews and the Arabs together. It hasn't worked. He worked with the World Council of Churches, so we had Bishop so-and-so coming to the house, you know, to chat with his special uniform on. I watched all that as a child. And Dad drove himself and did not have your computers, you see, to do the work properly. On the dining room table, he had an old typewriter and poor secretarial help. I'm advantaged there. I got my daughter editing for me and all that. He did not have the equipment. Warned himself out. The Jews and the Arabs, stop killing each other. It hasn't worked. If he'd lived now, he would be in despair. It hasn't worked. So you probably won't get a solution to that till my idea of the kingdom comes when Jesus comes back. That's eschatology. Another subject totally, but you probably won't be able to fix that right now. But doesn't it horrify you to have ISIS around? The Quran is a dangerous book. But maybe Muslims do. Civil dialogue, you can have that. But it's pretty dangerous because they really believe that they are supposed to rule the world and kill everybody who doesn't believe it. That's your problem, right? How are you going to humor that? I think only by person-to-person contact. And they're not all like that. I see that. And of course, they don't all believe that, but that's strictly speaking what some of the Quran says.
Wasn't that also a Christian perspective during the time of the Crusades?
It really was. It's no better. I mean, if we believe anything with you from this afternoon, not to waste your time, it is to realize the world is a fascinating place. It's pretty bad in many ways. And you can help to solve it. But when we start looking at some of these issues, it's pretty grim, isn't it? To think of what we, even as Americans or Brits, have done. Killing children. Nagasaki. There's a book called We of Nagasaki, which has graphic pictures of these children being burned by napalm. We did this. That suggests that the world is not ideal yet. In my theology, it's going to be. I'm a future kingdom person. You know, some of you are Baptists, you know what I'm talking about. But that's another subject. How do you remain positive in this? It's not always easy. There are some awfully grim things. And people are, if I had no people, it would be easy. You know? People are problems sometimes. So that's all I do. I appreciate your kindness and listening patiently. Thank you so much.
We're down to just the last minute or two. Let me make a couple quick announcements. First of all, when we finish in, say, 2 minutes or less, if any of you would like to stop and just visit with Anthony for a moment, you're welcome to do that. You may have a question, or you may want to get acquainted, trade email information, websites, whatever. You have that opportunity. I will remind you on Wednesday, if there's any overflow from this, we can pick it up. If not, then we will move toward The Strenuous Life by Theodore Roosevelt. And for those of you who are interested in coming out on Wednesday night, again, that's in Rice 17. It'll start at 7 p.m. Anthony will share his translation of the New Testament, explain how he went through the process, and then maybe show in a few key texts why different translators translate things, perhaps correctly or incorrectly, to the opposite of others. And I think you may find that interesting. So. All right, anything else we need to know?
Thank you.
A round of applause.